Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight, you wake up in the wrong century. There's something wet beneath your head. You don't dare lift it. In tonight's descent, we follow a story buried under centuries of silence, a tale that should have been forgotten, but wasn't. If you value the truth and don't mind a little discomfort, subscribe. But don't say you weren't warned. The lights, leave them on if you want. It won't help. Let's begin. You wake in mud. Your cheek is pressed into it. Cold, alive with things that squirm. A stench like blood and manure mixed with rain seeps into your nostrils. You blink against the fog, but it doesn't clear. Not the air, not the memory, not the century. You sit up slowly, as if every bone resists returning to its burden. The village around you is gone. Still smoking. Thatched roofs collapse like broken ribs. Walls blacken their stones, steaming from the morning dew. Somewhere a dog yelps once, then nothing. Even the flies have already fed and moved on. You've arrived in France. The year is 1346. The war has already started. You're not a knight, not a king. You are nobody. And you are not supposed to survive this. The 100 Years' War, they'll call it. A neat label for a chaos that won't die. It isn't one war, it is hunger, weaponized ambition disguised, and death wearing too many uniforms. The drums of politics beat in distant halls. But here, where you've landed, the sound is just fire crackling over flesh. There's a child's shoe in the mud beside you. No foot inside, but it's still warm. You don't ask why you're here. There's no time. The moment you stand, you see them, your fellow ghosts. Survivors, if you can call them that. A farmer missing an eye. A mother cradling nothing. An old man dragging a cart of scorched cabbages. They do not look at you. You're just another shadow among many. You trudge toward the remains of the village chapel. Its bell tower has collapsed, burying the priest and 2 altar boys. The altar still stands. Someone has scrawled Sanctus es Sanguis into the stone with a knife. Holy is the blood. You don't remember how you got here. You don't get to remember. But they say the English marched through here last week. Edward III leading an army of tens of thousands. All for a claim to the French crown justified by the long-dead mother of a king. You wonder what that crown is worth weighed against the burnt bones under your feet. You pick up a pot from the ruins. Empty, cracked, but still warm. A joke bubbles up unwanted. At least the hospitality's hot. You don't laugh. It's not funny. Not yet. The air smells like thunder, but it's only the rot. Rot of flesh, rot of faith, rot of purpose. And something else, something older hiding beneath it all. The smell of permanence. As if war has claimed this place as home. As if it intends to stay. A boy runs past you, maybe 10. Shirtless feet, bleeding eyes blank. You watch him disappear over the hill. He doesn't scream. Children here are born with silence tucked beneath their tongues. You find what's left of the town square. Scorched signs dangle from twisted iron. A baker's cart overturned. Loaves scattered in the ash hollowed out by rats. You pick one up. It crumbles like bone dust. Still you chew. The taste is what you expect: smoke salt and something sourer. You swallow. You regret it. A knight's helmet lies half buried in the road. You kick it. It rolls once and stops at the base of a crucifix. Someone's hung a pig's head on Christ's arms. You begin to understand. This isn't just about territory. Not really. This is the century digging its claws into the dirt, refusing to die quietly. You sit on a charred log outside a ruined house. A leg protrudes from the rubble. It wears a woman's slipper, pale, untouched by the flames. Her skin is blistered black. You wonder if she died quickly, or if she watched it all happen. You wonder if she felt anything at all. The whisper of armor reaches your ears, distant, metallic like wind rustling tin leaves. You duck instinctively, but it's only a deserter passing through. No colors. His sword is stained, not polished. He looks at you like you're already dead. You don't ask which side he's from. Neither does he. The war doesn't care, and neither do the men crawling through its belly. You remember something now, your name, only part of it, and that you used to laugh easily. You try to recall why. You fail. A woman approaches, cloaked barefoot. Her hands are wrapped in cloth soaked red. She offers you a tin cup, water, no wine, sour and old, but it cuts through the ash. You'll need this, she says. You don't ask her name either. Names are promises. Here promises are ash. Night falls with no ceremony. Just a slow extinguishing of light like someone pulling down the heavens by hand. You hear wolves, or maybe men pretending to be wolves. Either way, you don't sleep. Not because you're scared, because you don't yet know what to fear, and because you know something the others don't. This is just the beginning. You wake again, though you never really slept. Something soft and wet is clinging to your side, and for a moment you think it might be an animal. But it's bread. You rolled onto it in the night. A lump of barley paste, half-baked, half-rotted, wrapped in a linen scrap and buried shallow beneath a pile of stones. Someone hid it, someone who never came back for it. You eat it anyway. You gag, swallow, bite again. Welcome to breakfast. The war doesn't begin with swords. It begins with hunger. That kind that lives in your spine and creeps behind your eyes, turning every thought into a mouth. You've known discomfort. You've skipped meals. But this is different. This is famine stitched into the seasons. This is France, mid-14th century. The fields lie barren, either trampled by boots or salted by despair. Whole villages have no seed left to plant. The animals have long since been eaten or stolen or burned alive. Even the dogs have vanished. You think you saw one on a spit 2 days ago. It might have been a boy. The French call it la grande famine, the great hunger, but there's nothing grand about it. You pass a man with his face buried in the soil. He isn't moving. You think he might be dead until you hear the soft sob of chewing. He's eating dirt, or maybe he thinks he is, but you see the white shapes under the topsoil. Turnip roots, barely more than knots. You leave him to it. Later you'll find a woman boiling bark, pine shavings and moss in a copper pot. She offers you a sip, laughing without teeth. Soup, she says. You drink. It tastes like regret and rust. There is no army today, no banners, no trumpet calls. Just the distant growl of a nobility fattened by inheritance and a peasantry starving under it. And the strange thing, you begin to understand them. The ones who burned their own fields, who salted their own wells. They weren't mad. They weren't traitors. They were denying their enemies the pleasure of survival. You pull a rat from a snare you didn't set. Someone will return for it and curse your name. But for now, you win. You roast it over the skeleton of a wheelbarrow and pretend it's pork. The tail burns first. The skin blisters. The smell is unexpectedly pleasant. You're learning. Too quickly. But there are rules to famine, unwritten and final. Rule 1. You don't eat the dead in front of others. Rule 2. If someone asks if it's game, say yes. Rule 3. You never ask what's in the stew. Ever. In the town of Meaux, a baker was caught putting sawdust in his loaves. Not to deceive, just to stretch the flour. They hung him anyway. Bread is sacred, even when it kills you. That was 3 weeks ago. or maybe 3 years. Time stops counting when your ribs begin showing. You enter a chapel in ruins. A monk is handing out wafers and vinegar wine, not out of charity, out of penance. His face is grey, his fingers tremble, but he gives you both. You chew. The wafer sticks to your tongue like paper. The wine burns like piss. He watches you eat. The Lord provides, he says. You think if this is providence, I'd hate to see neglect. The monk leans close, his breath sour with fasting. They've started eating clay in Béarn, he whispers. Red clay, the kind that hardens in your gut. You nod. You don't know why. Maybe clay isn't the worst thing. The next village smells like soup. Real soup. Boiling in a cauldron over an actual fire. The scent pulls you toward it like a rope around your stomach. There's a line of people, silent, patient, terrified. At the front, a man with a ladle and one good eye. Your name, he asks. You open your mouth, but nothing comes out. Doesn't matter, he says, and pours a grey sludge into your bowl. You sit by a tree to eat. You don't look at the meat. You don't want to know if it has fingers or teeth. Across from you, a girl no older than 10 stares into her bowl. She hasn't moved in minutes. Then slowly she speaks. My mother said we'd be in heaven soon. You look around. If this is heaven, the devil won. You finish your soup. You leave the bowl. You travel again. You've stopped calling it walking. It's more like falling forward over and over. The land is empty. Even the birds have quieted. You think of England, a place you barely remember, a king with golden hair and swollen dreams. Edward. He's declared himself heir to the French crown, but he doesn't know what his soldiers eat. He doesn't smell the things you smell. His children aren't scraping frost off their lips in the morning. You wonder how he sleeps, maybe on bread. The truth is, this war started long before the fighting did. In wheat fields, in silos in the back rooms of tax collectors, counting how many loaves a man could lose before he screamed. Edward's claim was just an excuse, and King Philip's resistance just another mask for his own famine-drenched pride. Meanwhile, you learn what mold tastes like, what weevils feel like between your molars. You learn how to close your throat politely when the stew is moving. You learn not to ask questions. But the worst moment, the one that keeps you awake, is simpler. You're sitting by a river, gnawing at something dry, a biscuit maybe, and a boy walks up to you. Please, he says, holding out both hands. You give him half. He nods, takes it, and eats. Then he doesn't leave. He just sits there, staring. Not at you, at your hands. And that's when you realize he's waiting for you to die, just in case you still have food in your pockets. You wake with the taste of iron on your tongue, but it's not blood, not yours anyway. The smell finds you first sweet rot laced with something sharper, something wrong. You sit up beneath a dead tree, and for a moment you think it's winter. The white across the field, the soft hush in the air. Then you see the lumps. The snow is ash. The lumps are bodies. And you remember. It's not winter. It's the plague. No matter the war, no matter the banners or bloodlines, no side can stop what rides the rats back. Yersinia pestis doesn't pledge allegiance. It simply eats. The Black Death arrived in 1347, but you see its shadow in every direction. You step through a village where doors are marked with crude red crosses, sometimes with paint, sometimes with blood. Families sealed themselves inside voluntarily, sometimes with bricks, and waited to die together. Some wrote prayers on the walls in charcoal. Others drew maps of heaven. None of them reached it. You come across a well. Ropes cut, buckets shattered, A bloated corpse floats inside limbs curled like it's trying to climb out. A priest hanged himself nearby, the rope buried deep in the flesh of his neck. His cassock is still clean. He died before the sweat began. That's the first thing the plague takes your trust in touch. You stop shaking hands, stop comforting, stop carrying the dead. No last rites, no soft goodbyes. You wonder how long before they start burning the infected alive. You're surprised it hasn't happened yet. But worse than the fear is the guessing. You can't see it, not at first. Maybe it's just a fever, maybe just bad fish, a cough, a blister, a little swelling in the groin. Nothing serious. Then the groin bursts open and you hear them scream until their throat peels apart. You don't run. Where would you go? Besides, you might already have it. You think back to the night you shared a flask with a girl from Gascony. Was her hand shaking? Was that a bruise or a shadow? Now you dream of her skin falling away like wet paper. One town Montdidier emptied in 4 days. No battle, no siege, just silence. The wind scattered the church doors. Dogs ate their masters and then each other. Some say the priests there started confessing to trees, weeping into their sleeves like children. You pass through and see the grave pits. Mass trenches covered with quicklime, no markers, just a smell that crawls behind your teeth and refuses to leave. And yet, even now, the war continues. The kings still argue. Edward invades Normandy with 20,000 men. Philip counters with 30. Who's winning? You ask a man near Amiens. He's digging a grave for his daughter with a ladle. He says winning what? That's the thing about plague years. You forget why the killing started. All you remember is that it didn't stop. They say God sent it, as punishment, for vanity, for sodomy, for arrogance, for ambition. Pick a sin, there's a theory. Some whip themselves in the streets bleeding prayers into cobblestone. Others drown children for looking at the moon. And some blame the Jews. In Strasbourg, over 2,000 were burned alive in a single day. Not for fighting, not for stealing, but for existing. They were accused of poisoning wells, of summoning demons. You don't believe it, but you don't speak up either. Because silence is safer. You help bury a boy. His mother won't stop singing, the same hymn over and over. Ave Maris Stella. Her voice doesn't shake. Her hands do. The boy's eyes are still open, and they're not looking at heaven. They're looking at you. You close them. It doesn't help. A friar tells you the plague is God's finger pointing to the guilty. He doesn't notice the boils on his own neck. You want to believe there's some fairness, that good people die slower, that prayers work. But a week ago, you watched a convent of 26 nuns collapse into screams and filth in the same hour. Their abbess died last. She begged God aloud. The flies answered louder. You remember something your mother once said. Hell is not heat, it's helplessness. You begin to think she was right. But even in all this, there are rules. Rules you learn too late. Never touch a stranger's sleeve, and never drink from the town pump unless you saw the last person walk away from it. And if someone coughs more than twice, leave. Always leave. You trade your shoes for a bag of dried fruit. They fit the woman badly. You hear her cough before she's even out of sight. You don't feel guilty. You tell yourself that 3 apricots and a raisin might be worth more than feet. Later, you'll eat one and find a worm inside. You'll eat it too. You pass a battlefield that was never fought. Both armies abandoned it. Too many had spots on their skin. The banners are still there, rags tangled in trees fluttering over a valley of corpses. You don't count them. There's no point. But then something strange. A boy again. A boy approaches you holding a wooden cup. His face is pale but unmarked. His fingers trembling, but he smiles. He offers you water. You hesitate. He sees it. He lowers the cup, walks away. You follow him. You don't know why. His family is camped beneath a broken bridge, just 4 of them. A mother, 2 daughters, a goat. No spots, no coughing. The boy ladles water from a spring that smells clean. They ask nothing of you. Not your name, not your help, not your sins. Just if you'd like to sit. You sit. That night, for the first time in weeks, you sleep without waking to screams. The stars don't move, the ground doesn't shake, and the goat makes a sound that almost resembles contentment. You wonder, maybe this is safety. Then, just before dawn, the boy begins to cough. You do not look when the boy's mother starts to wail. You keep your eyes closed and your breath shallow. You hear the coughing, wet gurgling worse than before. Then the choking. Then silence. The dawn breaks, but it does not save him. You leave before the sun fully rises. You do not say goodbye. You do not look at his sisters. This is how grief works now, fast silent and always partial. There's no time for mourning. The war won't stop for the plague, and the plague doesn't stop for tears. You walk, again, north, or maybe east. Directions are blunted by despair. The road is lined with trees that have been stripped bare not by autumn, but by the starving. You pass hedges with bark gnawed to the bone. A man once boiled a leather boot into soup and fed it to his children. You remember that story now. You remember thinking it was ridiculous. Now you understand it was mercy. You hear hoofbeats. You don't hide. You don't even flinch. Because it isn't fear you feel. It's a new thing, something more hollow. You want the horsemen to pass, or to kill you. Either is fine. Instead they slow. They're knights, of a kind, young, shiny, laughing as they ride. One of them, a boy, really face pink from wine, tosses something to you. You catch it without thinking. It's an apple. Bruised but whole, sweet. And for the first time in what feels like years, you taste something like life. The knight calls out slurring for the glory of Edward. Then they vanish in a clatter of hooves and bravado. You keep walking slower now. There's a town ahead. The smoke is fresh, and for once it isn't from burning bodies. Inside the walls, soldiers' flags, drums. It's Coronation Day. Not here, but in rhymes. Across the fields, and far beyond your sight, a boy is being crowned. Charles VII of France. 14 years old, jaw trembling under a too heavy crown. His fingers barely reach the orb. His knees buckle under the weight of history. You wonder if he knows what he's inheriting. The ghosts, the rotted grain, the wars that started before he was born and will outlive him. He won't last long, you think. Then again, no one does. Back in the village, a priest reads the coronation aloud in Latin to an illiterate crowd. They nod solemnly, pretending they understand. A woman with a toothless grin whispers to you, "It won't change a thing." You nod. She's right. They'll crown another boy and another and another. Each one smaller. Each one further from the fire. Each one asking for more than they can carry. They send letters to each other. Demands for territory, treaties, promises of peace. But none of those scrolls mention the peasants who boil cats to stay alive. None mention the price of salt tripling overnight. None mention the funeral wagons that carry 20 children at once. You wonder if anyone told the new king that his fields are empty, that his people are learning how long they can go without food before their teeth fall out, that his banners are stained with more than rain. You reach the edge of a camp. English this time. or at least they wear English colours. Mercenaries mostly Flemish, German, Breton. Men who speak with swords and sleep with knives under their heads. You stay outside the fire's glow. You know better now, but you watch. A soldier sharpens a blade while humming to himself. Another smokes a pipe filled with something bitter and narcotic. A third man, older eyes like dead coals, carves a chess set from the bones of a horse. You notice his king is missing its crown. They aren't here to fight. Not yet. They're waiting, resting, drinking. Their coats of arms are stitched over tunics that haven't been washed in months. Most of them wear rings taken from corpses, but they smile, they laugh. They joke about the girls in Calais, about the weak wine in Poitiers, about how easy the next siege will be. One of them says, "We'll be home by harvest." You almost laugh. Home, harvest, as if those things still exist. You find a place to lie hidden in a copse, your back against a stump. The ground is dry for once. You dream of your own coronation crowned not in gold but in lice. When you wake, the sky is red, screaming fire again. You don't hear a run. What's the point? The town is under siege. You recognize the English banners now. Red cross on white, stiff, proud, waving like they matter. They're not here for conquest, not really. They're here to make a point, because a boy was crowned in France. So now, another boy must die. The army moves with precision, organized cruelty. They cut off escape routes first, then food, then water. They wait. You sneak back into the town under cover of smoke. A woman mistakes you for a soldier and tries to stab you with a broken fork. You don't blame her. You find shelter in a collapsed bakery. Flour dust still lines the floor. You lick some from the cracks. You don't care what's mixed in. A child next to you is gnawing on wood. You give him a piece of your apple. He nods once, doesn't speak. You hear someone praying in the corner. You hear someone else whispering. Maybe the French will come. They won't. Not in time. It always ends the same. A gate opened, a fire lit, a body swinging from a rope tied to a bell tower. You look up at the sky, redder now, the kind of red that doesn't belong to nature. You wonder if this coronation was worth it. You wonder if it ever is. You stay silent as the fire eats the town. The English don't rush. That's the cruelty of a proper siege. It's not a storm, it's a slow, controlled suffocation. Like watching a spider weave a web around something that still breathes. The gates fall on the third day, not broken open. Someone inside gave up. You never find out who. What follows isn't a battle, it's a harvest. You watch it from inside the bakery, peering through the slats of a broken window, the stench of scorched flour clinging to your tongue. The soldiers come in with methodical ease like they've done this before. They have. Too many times. One carries a torch, another carries rope. A third carries nothing but his smile. You don't see the moment the screaming starts. You only feel it in your spine, a pressure like a knife held too close to the bone. There are no sides here, no chivalry, no honor, just locked doors, kicked open pots of stew, overturned small hands dragged from hiding places. You see a soldier take a girl, not for information, not for ransom, just because. You hear the sound her throat makes and you close your eyes. You do not look again. You crawl beneath the floorboards. There are already two others there, a man and his daughter. She's shaking. He holds a sickle, but his grip says he'll never use it. You all listen to the boots above. You don't breathe. Not really. One of the boards is loose. You try not to think about that. Eventually the fire finds you. Not directly, just the heat. It blooms through the wood like fever. You emerge hours later into a ruin of ash and grease and silence. You're lucky. You hate that word now. Outside bodies lie in the street arranged like discarded dolls. Some still twitch. One is whispering something, maybe a prayer, maybe a name. Maybe she's just reliving the moment. You step over her. You have to. You pass the church, or what's left of it. The pews have been used for fuel. The altar is cracked. A single candle still burns at the foot of a statue. Mary, her face blackened by soot. You leave the town behind. You don't bury the dead. There are too many. And the flies are already doing their work. Later, you'll find out this tactic has a name. Chevaucher. A beautiful word if you don't know what it means. It's not conquest. It's not territory. It's terror. Plain and simple. You ride into enemy land not to fight an army, but to burn everything behind it, to make them starve, to make them fear. You target peasants, granaries, mills, wells. Every crop, every fence, every dog. If it breathes, it's a message. The French do it to the English. The English do it to the French. Sometimes to their own, just to remind everyone who's holding the leash. You remember a tale told by a boy in rags. An English captain once burned a field of wheat, then left a single sack untouched on a church altar. Inside it was a severed head smiling. You thought he was lying. Then you saw it for yourself in the town of Tonnerre. Not a head, but a hand, delicately placed. A wedding ring still on the finger. You stop near a river, not to drink, just to breathe. You see a woman kneeling beside the water. She's cleaning something. Cloth a child. You squint. It's intestines. She's washing them gently, carefully. She sees you watching. For sausage, she says, smiling. We're lucky. A pig wandered back into the village. You nod. You don't ask whose pig. You don't ask what kind. You move on. You think of all the people who started this war. Edward, Philip, Charles. You imagine them clean, perfume, their fingers soft from quills and gloves. They don't know this smell. They don't know this taste. They think war is land and law, borders and treaties. But for you, war is walking through a town where every dog has been flayed and hung upside down from windows. War is stepping on something soft and realizing too late it was someone's child. War is asking if meat is meat. You sleep in a burnt orchard. The ground still smells of pears, or what's left of them. You find a pit charred black, still warm. Someone burned the harvest here to keep it from the enemy. You sit beside it and think we are all enemies now. You dream of horses, galloping through fire, not carrying knights, but corpses. And you wonder what kind of God watches this and stays silent. In the morning you find another body. This one's different. His armor is clean, untouched by blood or dirt. He was left alone like a monument, but his eyes are gone. You wonder if he saw it coming, or if someone took his sight to hide his final look. You take his boots, they're warm, you keep moving, and for the first time you realize something with perfect clarity. You're not surviving anymore, you're participating. You find the mercenary camp by smell before sight. Rot, sweat, steel, oil, and something like vinegar boiled too long. It hits your nostrils like a slap. You gag, then steady yourself. You've smelled worse. The flags above the camp are patchwork French lilies, English crosses, German lions. None of them belong. None of them mean anything anymore. Mercenaries don't fight for country. They fight for coin. And they're the only ones eating full meals these days. You linger at the edge, watching, waiting. A man notices you. He's sharpening a dagger that looks like it was once a carving knife. The way he stares at you, flat speculative. You know he's already calculated your weight in silver. Hungry? He asks. You don't answer. That's the test. He chuckles. Suit yourself. But you'll die slower if you pick a side. That's the lie, of course. There are no sides anymore. Just paymasters. Contracts scrawled in wine and blood. The captains change allegiance like shirts. One day, they wear the colours of Edward. The next, they stab his men in the dark. You finally step forward. A woman approaches, tall, pale. Her face is scarred, one ear missing. She carries herself like she's forgotten what fear feels like. She tosses you a lump of bread hard enough to bruise. Payment's not always coin, she says. We need watchers, latrine duty, runners. You nod. You'll do anything. That's your first mistake. They put you with the grave detail, not to bury, to dig. This army doesn't clean up after itself. That's what people like you are for. You spend 2 days turning over wet earth, pushing bloated men into holes you stopped measuring after the 5th. You're told not to touch their weapons, or what's left of them. One night someone does. A boy named Mathis. He steals a ring off a dead knight's hand. The next morning, he's tied to a tree. The mercenaries let the dogs work slowly. No one stops it. No one speaks. You try to forget the sound he made near the end, like a song breaking in half. That night you meet him. No one says his real name. They call him the villain with clean hands. He's the captain here. You're summoned to his tent, not for punishment, not yet, just because he's curious. You enter. It's neat, obscenely neat. The floor is covered with fresh straw. There's a writing desk, a wine jug, a chessboard carved from ivory. A severed hand preserved in salt sits beside it, the nails perfectly trimmed. He doesn't look at you right away. He's cleaning his boots with a cloth that once wrapped a baby. Finally he speaks. You ever killed a man? You shake your head. He smiles without mirth. Don't worry, you will. He dismisses you with a flick, like swatting a fly. You return to your post outside the latrine trench. The smell is comforting now. Familiar. The next morning, orders change. You're joining a raid. You don't ask where. Doesn't matter. The target is French, or English, or Flemish, or convenient. The villain rides at the front in gleaming armor. It hasn't seen combat in years. He never dirties his hands. That's what you are for. The village is small. Wooden fences, one church. You count maybe 30 rooftops. The villagers don't resist. Why would they? They've seen this before. You hear the orders. Take what can walk. Burn the rest. Someone laughs. Should we burn the ones who can walk? No one answers. But you see 3 men dragging a woman by her hair. You look away. That's your second mistake. You're told to carry the goods. You open a barn and find 6 pigs. Real pigs. Clean, breathing. You hesitate. One of them looks at you, and something in its eyes reminds you of a child. You close the door and say the barn was empty. That's your third mistake. The villain's men find out. They don't kill you. That would be too clean. They make you slaughter the pigs yourself, one by one, with a knife too small. You don't cry. You just keep cutting. After the 5th, your hands slip. The last pig bolts. They cheer. They make you run it down. You do. You catch it. You kill it. And when you bring it back, they reward you with a strip of belly fat and a pat on the head. Good dog, one of them says. You eat the fat. You don't chew. You don't taste. You swallow like it's poison and hope it is. Later that night, you sit by the fire with your new family. They joke. They boast. One man tells a story about cutting off a child's fingers one by one to make her father talk. The punchline, the father never did. Everyone laughs, you don't. You stare into the flames and wonder how many more villages are left. How many more pigs? How many more fingers? You think about the villain and his clean hands, how they never touch blood, how his boots never muddy. You think of Mathis, of the girl in the river, of the night with no eyes, and you ask yourself, when did you become part of the machine, not a victim, a cog? You don't remember how many villages it's been. They blur now wooden huts, crying children, the thump of boots against earthen floors. You know them not by names, but by the way they burned. One went up fast dry as tinder, another choked on its own smoke. One smouldered for 3 days because the rain kept putting it out. That one smelled the worst. You've stopped asking why. Why this village? Why these people? The answer is always the same, someone paid for it. Tonight the captain names the next one Chauvency. Tiny, stone-walled, barely worth the torches. You're told this one is strategic. You don't know what that means anymore. You suspect no one does. You march at dusk. The sky is the color of old bruises. The wind carries the distant toll of a cracked bell. You wonder if they know you're coming. You hope not, because it's easier when they're surprised. The villain doesn't come. He never does. He gives the order and then drinks wine from a hollowed-out skull someone claimed belonged to a noble. You doubt it. The skull is too small. You reach Chauvency just before midnight. No guards, no defense. Just a village asleep in the lull between harvest and snow. You hear the order pass quietly down the line. No survivors. No survivors. It doesn't shock you. That's the shock. You're handed a torch. Your fingers tremble not from fear, but from the cold. You light it anyway. You start with the barns. That's what they always do. Grain first, then livestock, then people. You pass a man trying to lead his family away in a cart pulled by a mule. One of the mercenaries slits the mule's throat. The man screams, not for the mule. His children are still in the cart. You keep moving. You duck into a home, small, warm, still heavy with the smell of garlic and stew. You see a boy hiding under the table, eyes wide, mute. You close the door behind you. You take your torch. You hold it to the wall. You don't look at him again. Outside, the village glows like a constellation made of screams. You meet up with the others. One is laughing. Another is bleeding. Another is missing 2 fingers. He's still smiling. You sit down and drink. You try to tell yourself you didn't see the boy, that he was already dead, that it wasn't real, but you remember his eyes. They didn't plead, they didn't cry. They waited, like they'd seen it all before. Later you search the church for valuables, not because you're ordered to, because it's quiet inside and you need quiet. The statue of Christ above the altar has no arms. They've been chopped off, probably for kindling. Someone has painted eyes on his chest. Watching, always watching. You laugh, not because it's funny, because you don't know what else to do. Then you hear it. Not footsteps, not weeping, singing. A woman's voice, thin, wavering. You follow it down to the crypt. She's there kneeling beside a corpse wrapped in linen, singing a lullaby to it. You don't know if it's her child, or her husband, or just someone she found. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't stop. You leave without speaking. You stop pretending you're here to fight. You're here to burn, to erase, to make people vanish from maps. History won't record Chauvency. But you will. It will rot in your mind like meat left too long in summer heat. The next morning, you help dig a trench. The soil is frozen. You break it apart with a stolen sword. You don't know who will be buried here, or if anyone will. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it's just tradition. That night, the villain calls for you. He's in his tent polishing a spoon. There's blood under his nails. He asks, "Did you enjoy your work?" You hesitate. He smiles. "Good." Guilt is proof you're still useful. He pours wine, offers you a cup. You drink. It tastes like rust. You wonder, he says, why we do this, why we burn what we might one day rule. You don't answer. Because fear, he continues, is a faster architect than stone. He hands you a ring. It's warm. Take it, he says. You've earned it. You nod. You leave. You vomit behind the latrine trench. You wake the next day to silence. The camp is emptying. Onward again. Another town. Another night. But you lag behind. You find yourself walking back to Chauvency. Just for a moment. Just to see if anything remains. You find the well. The bucket charred. The rope gone. You find the bones of the mule. You find the boy's home. Nothing's left. But beneath the ash you see something. A shape. You brush the soot aside. It's a small wooden carving. A lion. Crude but sturdy. You take it. You don't know why. It's not for remembering. It's for keeping. Because sometimes the worst thing isn't the fire. It's surviving it. You think the church will offer sanctuary. You've been taught that all your life. If not safety, then at least silence. Reverence. A pause in the agony. But nothing holy survives this long. Not when war drags its belly across generations. You arrive at the abbey on a cloudy morning. It stands on a hill like a broken-tooth stone walls, chipped, stained with moss and rot. The bell tower leans and the bell itself is silent. Someone stole the clapper months ago. Probably melted it down for arrowheads. You walk through the arch. The doors are gone. Inside it smells of mildew and something faintly sweet, like apples left too long in the sun. Corpses maybe, or worse. A monk meets you near the nave. Thin, eyes like sinkholes. He offers bread. You eat. You realize halfway through it's made with rye. The hallucinations start before sunset. You see your mother, though you know she's dead. You see the boy from Chauvency, though he's ash. You see yourself kneeling before an altar made of bones, whispering something you can't hear. When you wake, the monk is still beside you. He says God still listens, but he doesn't speak anymore. You nod because you believe him. The other monks are worse. Some have cut out their own tongues. Others have carved words into their skin, Latin prayers that twist as their flesh heals and reshapes them into scripture. One has written Miserere mei Deus across his face. The scars make him smile constantly, even when he weeps. You help them for 3 days. They don't ask your name. They don't offer theirs. You learn silence can be a form of worship or a prison. You're not sure which you prefer. Then, on the 4th day, soldiers arrive. Not mercenaries, not bandits. Knights, real ones. Armor polished, crests clean, banners unburnt. They wear the lily. France. They're here for supplies. That's the word they use. They take the grain, the wine, the blankets. One monk resists. They take him too. You find what's left of him behind the stables that night. They fed part of him to their horses. You think you hear him say thank you. The knights leave the next morning. They don't even look back. The monks sing a hymn that night, voices weak and cracked. You recognize the melody. A funeral song. You don't join in. You wander the ruined cloisters and crawl through the cracks in the stone. Somewhere above, A bird nests in what used to be a window. You find a room sealed with a heavy door. Inside scrolls, books, relics. Preserved. A hidden library. One monk sees you inside. He doesn't stop you. You read. Not scripture. Ledgers, letters, confessions. One is from a knight who fought at Crécy. He describes killing a boy with a rock because he'd run out of arrows. I watched him twitch for 2 minutes, he writes, and I did not feel anything. That is the part that sickens me. You close the letter. You sit very still. You wonder if that's you now. If the sickness is not what you've done, but what you've stopped feeling. The monk beside you whispers, "We bury the dead under the floorboards. Do not look too closely at the tiles." You nod. You won't, but you already have. The pattern near the altar is uneven, raised slightly. You step on it. It shifts. You press harder. It groans, then cracks. Inside bones. Dozens, stacked like books. Not monks. Too small. Children, maybe. You step back. You don't ask. Because you know the answer. You return to the dormitory that night, but you can't sleep. You stare at the rafters and wonder how much rot it takes to bring down a roof. The next morning the monks are gone. You never hear them leave. You find the abbey quiet still and absolutely empty. You search for hours. No blood, no sign of struggle. The scrolls remain, the bones remain, but not them. You think maybe they walked into the woods and never came out. Or maybe they were never really there. Just ghosts in brown robes humming songs to keep themselves from remembering. You light a candle and place it near the cracked altar. You don't pray. You don't even believe. But the silence asks something of you. So you whisper, "Don't remember me." You leave the abbey. Outside it starts to snow. The flakes melt on your skin like little absolutions. But they don't stick. They never do. You don't enlist because of patriotism. You enlist because it's snowing and your fingers are blue. Because the last of your food was stolen by a dog that looked hungrier than you. Because a man in a red cloak promised warmth boots and a coin for every day you survive. Not fight. Survive. They don't expect you to win. They just need you to hold a line. They put a spear in your hand. The shaft is rough splintered. Someone else's blood is still crusted near the tip. You don't ask who it belonged to. You tell yourself the color is rust. The camp is a frozen pit beside the Loire. Half the men have lice, the other half have dysentery. The captain says both build character. You believe him, because he's the only one with gloves. You learn quickly. Don't sleep near the latrines. Don't eat meat you didn't see cooked. Don't trust anyone who smiles too much. That last one is especially important. The man sleeping beside you whistles in his dreams. One night, you wake to find him not there. The next morning, his boots are nailed to the mess tent wall still filled. You learn to watch the sky. Not for omens, but vultures. They always circle a day early. You see your first real battle at La Roche-Posay. A skirmish, they say. Light work, it's not. You hold the spear like they taught you. Tight, steady, no flinching. But when the first arrow hits the man beside you, you do flinch. It makes a sound like tearing parchment. His lungs whistle through the wound. He gargles your name before he drops. You didn't tell him your name. You wonder whose name he meant. You keep standing, because falling means dying and you're not ready for that yet. A knight crashes through your line, blood spraying from his visor. He's laughing, not because he's winning, because his jaw is gone and laughing is all that's left. You stab him. The spear glances off his armor. You stab again. The point sinks under his arm. He twitches, then goes still. You can't let go of the spear. It's stuck in him. You're dragged 5 feet before the mud swallows you. When you crawl free, your hands are empty. You feel like part of you stayed in him. The battle ends at dusk. No horns, no cheers, just absence like something large passed through and tore a hole in the world. They call it a victory. You call it Tuesday. You're rewarded with half a loaf of bread and a strip of wool. It's the warmest you've felt in weeks. You try to sleep, but something won't let you. Not guilt, not fear, hunger, the kind that never stops, not for food, not even for safety, but for feeling. You want to feel something, anything. So the next morning you volunteer for the foraging party. They hand you a knife. You're sent to a nearby hamlet to collect necessities. It's empty. You find one woman barely breathing hidden under sacks of oats. Her hands are frostbitten black. She whispers, "Don't take the baby. You don't see one." You pretend you didn't hear. You take the oats. That night someone sings by the fire. You don't recognize the language. Breton maybe. The tune sticks in your spine. The man singing has no ears. Frost bitten off last winter. He sings anyway. You dream of him peeling his own skin like bark revealing red beneath. When you wake, he's still singing. But now there are fewer men listening. Fewer men every morning. Some desert, some die, some disappear. You don't ask anymore. You just wait for the next order, the next village, the next line, the next reason to keep standing. They say this will all end soon. They always say that. Then they hand you another spear. You take it. You're not a soldier. You're not even a man anymore. You're a tool with a pulse. A meat puppet with mud-caked boots and a quiet hope that maybe the next battle will be your last. Not because you want to die, but because you don't want to keep living like this. The officers say glory is coming. You try to believe them, but you've seen what they call glory. It smells like rot and sounds like screaming. You want no part of it, but you keep marching, because if you stop, you'll freeze, and you're too afraid to die cold. The field looks like any other from a distance, but as you walk, you notice the irregular mounds, the silence, the absence of crows. Even the insects won't touch this soil. It takes a moment to realize why. Beneath every bump in the dirt lies someone who never got a marker. You count 14 before you stop counting. The grave nearest you is shallow, the shape of a small body beneath. Rib cage arched like a broken bird. A scrap of linen tangled around what might be a shoulder. You can't tell if it's a child or a woman. You kneel, but you don't pray. You're not sure who they were praying to when they died, and you don't want to call that God's attention to yourself. The war doesn't just break cities and kings. It breaks memory, because the nobility get their tombs, their names carved in stone, their deaths dressed up with banners and velvet and marble angels. But peasants vanish. No one records a farmer who dies of plague in a burned-out barn, or a girl gutted in the first wave of a chevauchée, or a mother who drowns herself in a well because she can't feed her 6th child. No. Those names sink into the earth and dissolve. You're the only one who remembers them now, and you don't even know who they are. You pass a tree with rope marks on the lowest branch, frayed fibers still clinging, blood crusting the bark. This wasn't justice, it was panic. Someone hangs someone else for something, a broken lock, a missing ration, a look held too long. Maybe the child is buried nearby, or maybe they left her to the dogs. Either way, no one came back to clean it up. Further down the road, you find what remains of a cart, splintered wheels, shattered crates, and a small ceramic doll. One eye missing, the other staring upward with more clarity than you. You pick it up. You leave it on a fence post. Someone should see it before it's gone. The days stretch like skin before tearing. You're marching again. No idea where. Your boots leak. You don't even look at maps anymore. The men ahead whisper about Brittany, or Gascony, or nowhere in particular. You reach a village. What's left of it? No roofs, no animals, no people, except one. A woman nailed to the door of the church. She's long dead, face bloated, hands swollen around the rusty nails. Her dress is black with blood, but you notice something stranger, a rosary around her neck, and a wooden plaque above her that reads witch. You wonder if she died for summoning demons, or simply for surviving a battle. You ask your captain. He shrugs. She had food. That's close enough. You realize it doesn't matter. The dead don't argue. You find another body beneath the altar. This one smaller. No sign of violence. Just still. A baby swaddled in grey cloth. Not buried. Not hidden. Just placed. Like an offering. You back away. Later that night, someone steals your bread. You don't chase them. They need it more than you. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself. The grave field stays in your mind. Not because it was gruesome, but because it was normal. You've passed dozens like it since. So many that they begin to blur. Like graves don't need names anymore. Just soil. Just time. You hear someone behind you whisper, "My mother's buried in one of those." You turn. It's a boy. Too young to hold a blade. But he holds one anyway. You ask which grave. He shrugs. Doesn't matter. They all rot the same. You nod, and for the first time you feel something like shame. You've walked over bones. You've stepped on fingers. You once sat on a log that turned out to be a thigh bone wrapped in moss. You said nothing, because silence is survival. But silence is also complicity. You start marking them when you can. A stone here, a branch there, a scrap of fabric tied to a post. It's not much, but it's something. You name them even if the names are lies. That one is Jeanne. That one is Luc. That one is the woman who tried to keep her baby alive with soup made from boiled boots. You start to believe your own stories, not because they're true, but because they're better than the truth. The truth is this: most people die forgotten, especially the poor, especially in war, especially in a war like this one that stretches across rains and rivers and reasons until the reasons don't matter anymore. You remember something a priest said once before his tongue was cut out. God records every sparrow that falls. You wonder if he still bothers, because no one else is watching. No one but you. And you don't know how much longer you'll be around. You don't remember when your fingers stop working. At first, it was just a numbness, easy to blame on cold. You flexed them by the fire, rubbed them together, pissed on them once or twice, hoping for warmth. But now they're stiff grey at the knuckles. You press the tip of your thumb with a knife. No blood, no pain. Just a waxy dent. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because the alternative is screaming. Welcome to Agincourt. The fields are mud ankle deep and sucking. What the French called farmland last summer is now a pit of damp misery where Englishmen wait to die. You wonder how many of them understand that. Probably not the ones in armour. They pace in clean steel suits, visors, polished banners fluttering like they still mean something. They have meat in their satchels, wine in their cups. They joke about glory, about St. Crispin, about cutting through frogs like butter. They don't mention dysentery, or the rats chewing through saddlebags, or the slow creeping horror that this field is a coffin, just not filled in yet. You sleep beside 3 other men under a canvas tarp, so thin it leaks even when it doesn't rain. The older one mutters in his sleep. The younger one weeps. The third one doesn't make any sound at all anymore. You're not sure he's alive. Every night you curl around your stomach, hoping it'll stop growling long enough to let you rest. It doesn't. You try eating grass once just to see. It comes back up in green strings. The captain walks through camp with a torch and a riding crop. You've learned not to meet his eyes. He flogs a boy for trying to steal onions. You watch the welts bloom on the boy's back, like flowers in reverse. The ground turns colder each night. The boots you wear are so full of holes, you feel every root, every stone, every squirming thing that finds its way inside. When you take them off, your toes are purple. One is black. You know what that means. You saw a man last week lose his foot after the same discoloration. They chopped it off with a woodsman's axe. He didn't scream. He just looked away like it was happening to someone else. It was easier that way. The surgeon who did it had blood on his beard and a half-eaten apple in his pocket. You don't know which disturbed you more. Then the storm comes. Not thunder French, a wall of cavalry and steel. The king gives a speech, you don't hear it. You're too busy trying to piss one last time before it starts. Your bow is damp, your fingers barely bend. The string snaps once during practice, lashing your cheek. Blood tasted like salt and rust. They line you up on the left flank, no shield, just a helmet too big and an arrow pouch half full. The mud swallows your feet as you stand. And then they charge. Not your side. Theirs. Knights thundering through wet earth, banners flapping metal, glinting beneath a sky that refuses to break. They don't look like men. They look like statues being flung at you by angry gods. You shoot. The arrow wobbles in flight, hits a shield, bounces off. You shoot again. This one finds a visor gap. The knight falls. Doesn't move. You feel nothing. They reach the mud pit, and the horses falter. Some scream, some crumple. The weight of their riders drags them down. And then the second wave hits from behind. The French are too eager, too confident. They pile on each other like cattle in a slaughter pen. And that's when the real dying begins. You see a knight's helmet torn off and his face immediately caved in by a mace. His teeth scatter like gravel. Another tries to crawl free, his legs broken backward at the knees. Someone stabs him, then stabs him again, and again. You do too, because it's him or you. You plunge a dagger under a chin plate and feel the warm gush on your wrist. Your hands are so cold you welcome the heat. Later, when the field quiets, you're ordered to execute prisoners, not because they've done anything, but because there are too many. And the English fear a counterattack. You're given a club, not even a blade, just wood. You walk to the captured men, tied, bruised, unarmed. One of them looks up at you. His face is familiar. You think he sold you bread 2 winters ago. Or maybe he was a squire in Calais. Or maybe he just looks like your brother. It doesn't matter. You raise the club. You hesitate. Then someone else does it for you. The man falls, twitches. You do the next one, and the next. By the third, your arm stops shaking. You wonder if they felt anything at all. If they understood why. If they forgave you before the wood struck bone. You sleep better that night. You shouldn't. When the sun rises, the field looks like a butcher's trough. Bodies stacked like firewood, helmets filled with blood, arrows still quivering in eye sockets. Victory, they call it. Glorious even. But when you look down at your hands covered in clotted red, cracked with cold stiff beyond healing, you see nothing glorious. Just survival, just frostbite and rot, and the memory of faces you will never speak of again. The worst part, you know you'll do it again. because winter hasn't even started. You're not close enough to see her face at first. You just hear the crowd, that restless, hateful hush before violence. The same silence animals make before a pack attack, alert, quiet, hungry. Then the bell tolls. 1, 2, and then the hiss of flame catching cloth. The scent is the first thing that reaches you. Oily, thick. It smells like butcher's rags soaked in candle wax. Underneath it, piss. Someone's bladder released in fear. She stands in the center, tied to a stake. You didn't expect her to be so small. Joan of Arc, the maid. Not a warrior now. Just a girl in a simple shift, arms bound behind her, a rope biting into her ribcage. There is no armor, no halo, only splinters pressing into her skin. Her hair is shorn, her feet bare. She's shaking. The priest beside her mutters something. Latin. You wonder if it's a blessing or a sentence, and you realize she's younger than you. The fire doesn't start at once. It stutters. Licks her shins like a dog testing her resolve. She doesn't scream at first. But when she does, it's high, an animal sharp as shattered glass. The kind of sound that can only come from someone who doesn't believe they're dying until their lungs begin to melt. You flinch. Someone near you laughs. You stare at them. They shrug. Witch. But you saw her lead them. Saw the French believe in her like a relic that bled wine. Saw the way soldiers who hadn't stood straight in years lifted their heads when she passed. That power, real or not, was worth more than 1,000 knights. And that's why they're killing her. Because men can't stand a woman with conviction. Especially not one who speaks to gods that answer her and not them. The English call it justice. A lawful execution. She wore men's clothes, claimed visions, raised an army. But here's the truth, it's revenge. They couldn't beat her on the field, so they lit a pyre instead. And now you watch her lungs collapse in smoke and soot and screams. The wind changes. Ash lands on your face. You don't wipe it away. You let it smear. You want to remember this. They say she dies saying the name of Jesus. You think she says water. They burn her again after she dies, to make sure there's nothing left. No relics, no pieces, no bones to cherish, just char and myth. They throw her ashes in the Seine. You wonder if the river noticed, or if it just carried her away like it would any other girl murdered in daylight. Later in camp you hear stories. She turned arrows in midair. She glowed in battle. She never once bled from her wounds. And then another story that her screams lasted longer than they should have. That she didn't beg not once. That her heart didn't burn. It was found intact in the ashes. You laugh. You hope it's true. Because if there's a God, they should at least be confused by her. Years later, you pass through Rouen again. The square is empty. The stake is gone. But you can still see the burn pattern in the cobblestones. No one talks about it. But no one steps there either. The silence has a shape. You meet a woman in a tavern who claims to have known her. She pours wine with hands that shake. You ask what she was like. She says not holy, just loud. You like that? The war grinds on. New generals, new kings, new names carved into banners. But no one forgets the girl. Even the English say her name with a hush now. Because burning someone doesn't erase them. It consecrates them. You wonder what the priest thought when she called out to him as the flames reached her face. If he looked away. If he cared. If even for a second he thought we've made a mistake. But that's the nature of righteous men, isn't it? They always believe the devil wears the opposite uniform. One night, long after you see a girl riding through the mist on a horse. Alone. No army. No sound but hooves in the mud. You blink. She's gone. Maybe a trick of the fog. Or maybe she's still here, her ghost walking the battlefield. Not to haunt, but to ask, why didn't you stop them and you? You have no answer, because you were there, and you did nothing. The banners are faded now, frayed, patched, stitched over with symbols that no longer match the names of the men beneath them. The bright blue of France has dulled to a weary grey. England's red lion limps. You pass a boy in armour too large for him, dented from another man's death. He asks where the fighting is. You don't know how to answer, because it's everywhere and nowhere. The war has become air unseen but always in your lungs. Children are born into it not knowing there was ever a time without siege horns and forced levies. They call the soldiers uncles whether they're family or not. They call the corpses normal. You've seen 3 kings come and go, watched noble houses burn down to nothing, villages wiped off maps, rivers turned black with blood. You forget what started it. A throne, a cousin's insult, a marriage that should have been. Someone says it was all because of a law written 100 years ago, Salic law. You wonder how many bones have turned to dust under that law's weight. But now, no one remembers the insult, only the revenge. That's what war becomes eventually, not purpose, not politics. Just a long memory of pain passed down like heirlooms. You watch 2 boys fight over a scrap of salted meat. One slashes the other with a broken shard of mirror. The wounded boy screams, not in pain, in rage. You separate them. Later you'll realize they're cousins, fighting over nothing, just like their nations. You move with a company now that barely speaks the same tongue. Half-Bretons, Flemish stragglers, a Gascon woman, who doesn't remove her helmet even when she sleeps. You don't ask why. No one does. Trust died somewhere back at Poitiers. You come upon a town half English, half French. No one flies a banner. They just nod silent when you ask for bread. They've learned neutrality. Not from politics, from survival. A child with one eye draws soldiers in the dirt with sticks. One wears feathers, one wears bones. He draws a third with no face. You ask what that one is. He says he's the one who watches. You don't sleep well that night. One of your companions, a man named Elric, falls sick with fever. He raves about fire raining from the sky, about devils in armour made of ice. You sit with him until he dies. The Gascon woman weeps, quietly. You see her place a coin on his tongue, not for the ferryman, for silence. You travel for weeks without encountering an army, only ashes, scorched farms, fences built from ribs and twine. One church has a cross that's been nailed upside down. By accident, you're not sure. Inside someone's written, "God is not here." You agree. Later, you encounter a group of children dressed in stolen mail. They're playing Burn the Traitor. One child is tied to a post, while the others dance with torches. You step in, take the fire from them. They hiss at you like wild animals. That night you hear the same words in your dreams. Burn the traitor. Only now it's your name they chant. You wake choking. You see a monk carrying parchments across a field. His sandals are bloodied. He tells you he's writing a history of the war. You ask which side. He pauses, then says neither. You nod. Then ask who will read it. He doesn't answer. The monk is killed by bandits 2 days later. They don't take the parchments, just his boots. You keep walking. You pass a field where bones have surfaced from the earth pushed up by frost. Some are still dressed in rusted armour, some are not. One skull has a rose growing through the eye socket. You laugh. Too long, too loud. You remember a time when that would have haunted you. You're numb now, numb in places even fire can't reach. And yet, you keep walking, because the war hasn't ended, and deep down you know it never really will. The road curves homeward, or what's left of it. You follow tracks that no longer lead to anything certain, old memories, whispered directions, the ghost of a village's name. The trees thicken. The sky stays the same color no matter the time, ash gray, as if the sun itself got tired of this century. You don't walk with soldiers anymore, just shadows. There was a time you feared ambushes, raiders, patrols. Now you almost long for them. Something to prove you still exist. Your boots find the edge of the hamlet you were born in, or something close to it. The well is still there, choked with dead leaves and a rat skull. You dare not drink. The church is a husk. Its bell cracked, its altar missing. Someone carved obscene faces into the pews. You wonder if they were prayers in the only language the world now understands. Your house leans against time like a drunk man who's lost his name. A tree grows through the center of it. The door hangs from one hinge like a broken jaw. Inside, silence. No voices, no heat, no trace of the people who made you. But there are signs. A stain on the floor where someone bled. A child's toy hand-carved and headless. An iron pot crusted with something unnameable. A pair of shoes so small they feel like an accusation. You sit on the cold stone floor. Dust settles on your shoulders like ash. You're not crying. Your eyes just won't stay open. You remember that once there was a fire here. And laughter. A mother's voice. You can't remember what she said. Outside something moves. You tense, but it's only a dog. Half-starved, fur, mangy eyes, too human. It stares at you for a long moment, then slinks away. Even the animals know this place is no longer a home. You walk to the edge of the fields. They used to be golden in summer. Now they're riddled with brambles, half-buried bones, rusted blades. You trip on something. It's a cross. Wood splintered, barely held together. The name's long worn off. You set it upright anyway. There's no one to see it. But the act feels necessary, like closing the eyes of the dead. You pass what was once your neighbor's cottage. The hearth is full of soot. Inside is a fresco on the wall crudely drawn. A woman with wings, perhaps an angel, perhaps something older. Below it, a phrase in red ochre. We waited. You don't know if it was a warning or a confession. You keep walking. At the river's edge you find corpses, fresh. 2 men robed. A woman, her hands bound, mouths stuffed with dirt. You search them, not for coin, just for answers. You find none, but you take the woman's ring. Not for theft, for memory. She had a name once. Someone should carry it forward, even if you never learn it. You bury them, not out of duty, out of defiance, because this war took everything else from you. It doesn't get your mercy too. Later you hear voices, children playing, a lullaby your sister once hummed, the crackle of a hearth. You follow them, but there's nothing there, just the wind through dead trees. You sit by the river that night, staring into the black water, wondering how many of your memories are real. The face of the girl you loved, the scar on your father's knuckle, the way your brother laughed before he marched off to war and never returned. You see your reflection. It doesn't look like you. It looks like something that survived, not lived, not healed, just endured. And you understand now why so many men never returned. It wasn't that they died. It's that when the war ended, they had nothing to return to. The land forgot them. The people changed. The homes crumbled. Even the language is different now. You are the relic, and not a holy one. A boy passes you up the road the next morning. young, bright-eyed, hauling a basket of apples. He nods politely. You nod back. He doesn't recognize you. Why would he? You are the shadow in the story his grandmother tells when the fire burns low. The warning in his nursery rhyme. The ghost who walks home long after the house is gone. You stay a few more nights, not because you hope for change, but because leaving feels like lying. The fields are quiet, too quiet, and still you jump at sounds that aren't there. A clatter of armor, a child's scream, a voice whispering in a tongue you never learned but understand all the same. War leaves echoes. You're made of them now. One morning you find footprints near the stream, barefoot small. Following them, you see a boy kneeling by the water scooping mud into a bowl. His hair is matted with filth. He hums a lullaby, your lullaby. He doesn't run. He stares at you with eyes that have never known peace. You ask his name. He shrugs, points to the sky. You look up. There's nothing there. You return to your crumbling house. Spend an hour pulling nails from the collapsed roof. Not to fix anything, just to do something deliberate, measured, predictable. It doesn't help. You find yourself laughing at things no one else would. The smell of cooked meat makes you gag. You wear your sword belt even though your sword's long gone. You sleep in the corner of a room with no door. The wind sings lullabies through the cracks, and one night it rains. Not the gentle kind, the kind that feels like judgment. You sit beneath what used to be your roof soaked and think of the girl you kissed behind the hayloft. She died at Crécy, or maybe Agincourt. Maybe she just disappeared like the others. You realize you don't remember her name. You begin carving it into the wall anyway. Not for her, for you. Because forgetting is the only mercy war gave you, and tonight you decide you don't want it. A traveller passes through days later. An old man with a horse and 100 scars. He sees you sitting by the ruins. He says, "The war's over, you know." You look at him. Then you nod. Because you've learned war never really ends. It just stops making noise. And when the noise is gone, something worse sets in. Silence. You walk again. You meet others, survivors. Some broken, some pretending not to be. One woman asks what side you fought for. You shrug. Whichever one I had to. She nods. She understands. You travel together for a while. Not for protection, just to hear someone breathing beside you. She tells you of a village where peace has taken root, where the dead are buried and the living plant wheat. You both go. The village is real, but it doesn't feel like salvation. It feels like waiting. You work the fields. You mend fences. You eat bread that tastes like sawdust. At night, you dream of fire and arrows and voices calling you by names you never chose. One day, a child asks what the war was like. You look at him and say long, that's all. That's enough. Years pass. You age faster than you should. Your joints ache. Your memories blur. One morning you look in the mirror and see someone else entirely. Someone the war forgot to kill. And you wonder, were you lucky or did you just lose slower? The seasons shift. The earth turns. And still somewhere an old man walks a battlefield alone, though it's now a pasture, and the cows do not know what lies beneath their hooves. Children run through old ruins laughing among the stones. They do not know the names of the dead. They do not ask. The world forgets. It must. Memory is a weight the living can't always carry. But you remember. You remember the mud that swallowed boots whole, the way hunger made you see faces in the smoke, the long silences after screams. You remember marching to nowhere for someone else's glory. You remember praying with no answer. killing with no reason. You remember the girl who died without a name, the boy with the mirror-shard blade, the monk who wrote for no one. You remember being forgotten, and still, you wake each day. You drink water drawn from ground where kings bled. You plant seeds in soil once choked with bodies. You breathe, you endure, because that is what survival becomes in the aftermath of war, not triumph, not peace. Just motion, just moments, just the slow crawl away from memory towards something that might one day be hope, or might not. The war is over, but some part of you still listens for the drumbeat, still hears the horn, still waits for the arrow in the dark. And even now, as you sleep beneath the quiet sky and dream of things long past, you turn once just to be sure. You thought you were safe, didn't you?